Good morning, good afternoon, happy Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. It's time for another episode of Let's Build a HubSpot Super Admin with Lucy Abal. How are you doing today, Lucy?
Hi, Chris. How are you? Doing great here. And glad to have this conversation today.
Yeah, HubSpot never lets us down as far as giving us something to talk about. Um,
Yes.
Wondering, there's conversations around like the conversation of what is an admin and what are they supposed to be doing is getting more and more nuanced as just so much change happens. While AI comes in and does a bunch of admin stuff for you. And then this week, I was going to say maybe the biggest update of the year. And then George mentioned maybe of all time, uh,
Yes.
renaming, the ability to rename uh, standard objects, those standard objects being contacts, companies, deals, and tickets, but also now the new object library objects of appointments, courses, listings, and services. That's a different HubSpot portal. What's an admin to do, Lucy?
Yeah. So I think this all relates to customization, right? So I think that HubSpot users still don't fully know what customization means. And we might say, yes, of course, it's creating custom properties. Yes, of course, it could be creating custom objects. Or even though now it could be changing the name of your objects. But there's a lot more to do with that because it never ceases to amaze me when we arrive to a new client and they haven't built custom views. They have 14 ticket pipelines, and every one of the teams, every one of the pipelines are showing the same information for tickets. And why are you doing that? So sometimes we let ourselves be amazed by shiny objects and new things like AI, but we forget about doing some super basic stuff that are the ABC for admins. That is creating your record view customization. You can do it for everyone. You can do it for a specific team. Of course, having custom properties is part of the game of doing that. You can have your cards being conditional depending on the information that you're showing. Because, and I have a lot of examples. So we have a client that they do taxes for their customers, right? So their customers could be not only in the US and not only in different states, but they could be in other countries. So depending on the customer, I could show one type of information or other one, right? Or depending on, of course, on the customer state that they are, my ticket can show some information or other information. And of course, we are thinking about conditional views regarding currency, regarding the country they are at, the type of services, the type of taxes that we're doing for them. The same thing apply for a lot of any other industry, right? So I think that the first thing that we need to know is what is the most important information that our teams need to see and when. Of course,
Yep.
then we can think about during the sales process at the first stages when we're on discovery meetings, on discovery stages, we want or we need to complete some information. Okay, but I don't want to keep seeing that information when I'm sending the proposal at the end of the pipeline. So I think it should benefit the sales team for seeing different information as soon as you progress during the pipeline. Another
Yeah.
thing that is worth mentioning, of course, is conditional properties on different stages of the pipeline. People still are not embracing that. And I think that is crucial because when you want to, or when you need to have specific information completed or known before moving to a specific stage, you should use that functionality. And I still see a lot of clients not even knowing that that exists, right?
Right.
And
Yeah. And I think what comes to mind is this challenge of, and this personally, I'm struggling with this with delivery of projects right now. Like I financially, it's in my best interest to deliver the agreed like scope as quickly as possible to get to the next milestone, to get to at least in the way that some projects are outlined, and some people like to, you know, consume a project and understand how much it's going to cost them and how much time. So instead of a retainer, like they want to know exactly what they're getting, right? But it goes against my like will of I don't want to deliver it if you don't know how it works, right? Because I'm just going to deliver it, and then all these questions are going to show up that make it clear we haven't done the work, or you weren't paying attention that day, or whatever. And one from yesterday was we've built like some delivery management using two pipelines in services object and a ticket pipeline, and it creates this um, basically parent-child relationships between two service types and a ticket. And so when you go into the index page, the concern was, oh, I'm going to see all the services together, and now I see these two things together. And I was trying to we try to message via Teams, figure out like, okay, what are you actually like? Why is this a problem? I thought we were clear on what was happening here. And it's like, jump on a call, 5 minutes. Oh, like, yeah, this is how you filter pipeline by pipeline, right? And then as soon as we went from trying to change the object type to just learning how to use the CRM index view, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, like, if we struggle with that level of customization, of customizing a view, and now you can just, it's turning into blank slate, like a lot of other systems where you can just rename stuff. It's a very slippery slope. And that's where I'm curious where you stand on, like, people want, at least end use, the farther away you get from an admin, right? The suggestion is just deliver the view to the salesperson. They don't need to know how it works. They don't need to know everything behind it. But I just see, like, how could they possibly tell you what they want or what the view needs to look like if they don't understand something a little bit more than just going in to do their job? It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the role, it's part of the game. And I think, of course, I love working with clients that have super clear what they want, what they, or kind of like an idea of how HubSpot works. But most of the cases, that's not the real scenario. So I think that they come to us, and that's why I like to call myself a guru, a HubSpot guru, is because we give them guidance. So you tell me what you need to do, and I'm going to help you understand what is the best way of implementing that. But sometimes it's a very thin line between what we can do to customize the CRM, what is available and what's not. Because sometimes they tell us, no, but can you change how the CRM looks? No, I cannot change how the CRM looks. I can change some of the components or some of the things that you see on a record, but the index space or the workspaces, I cannot change them for the moment, at least. So there are some things that I cannot change. So sometimes they say, can I see this card in blue? No, I cannot change the colors because HubSpot user's interface is a gray area. It's not something that I can change the color. Not yet, at least. I think they're wonderful ideas, but we need to understand what is HubSpot product, and what is the customization that we can do, right? And I know that sometimes it's difficult to understand, and I love that clients become more and more creative with time. But I think it's our role as admins to tell them, this is possible, this is not, we have these options. Within these options, I think this is the one that is going to be better for your processes, gain more adoption with your team, with more flexible, with more user-friendly. We should see those options. For example, yesterday I was starting a new project and I was The client asked me, can you do an audit about my website? Okay, yeah, but what do you want me to look at the website? Yeah, no, if I'm looking, if I'm doing it good, if I'm doing it wrong, okay, but what do you want to, what do you feel? Now, that after a couple of minutes and a lot more questions, he told us that he didn't think that the CMS was very friendly and the user experience wasn't nice. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
we said. So that's not a problem of the CMS itself. It might be a problem of the theme of the template that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he said, okay. So I can take a look at the theme that you're using and I can tell you if it was a super old theme from 2020 or awful 2022. So imagine how many things have changed in the last couple of days. Imagine in 3 years. So okay, so I'm gonna take a look at the theme, I told him, and I'm gonna tell you what's wrong with the theme and what you should have in a new theme so that it's working the way that you want, because he was wanting to do the drag and drop, he was trying to do more flexible columns, but that's not available in all themes because this is rather new, this is rather from the last year. So if you're using an old theme, it's logical that you're not going to be able to do that. So sometimes the frustration of clients help us take a look at in the right places of what is going on, right? But we need to ask the right questions and they need to give us the straightforward answers, right? So it's not like I hate the CMS, I want to go out. Okay, so but let's just talk about it. Let's just see what's wrong with the CMS, what's wrong with your landing pages,
Right.
and all that, right?
Yeah. No, I love that journey you just shared because and here we are again, like as an admin or even as a consultant partner, like if you haven't confirmed awareness of like current state and what's actually happening and what's actually possible, like that's got to be job number one. And if, because it's so easy to say, oh, I want to do this. And the user says, I want to do this and I can't. And we just like start to solution. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll build this for you. Like, meanwhile, we know it's like HubSpot can clearly do that. And instead of asking like what you just shared, okay, what, like, at least like, why do you feel that you can't do that right now? And then you get to that spot where, I mean, CMS themes and stuff like that's where the more you rely on the outside build stuff, right? We talk about building for HubSpot all the time. And the importance of that in the app marketplace. Like, it's just, do they have the awareness of what's possible? And an example I have from last week, and this is showing up more as HubSpot tries to create parity with all the other systems that we're used to using. Orders, right? And this is where if you can dig into the mindset most people have about HubSpot and what it's supposed to be doing, I'd say in 95% of cases, it's the sales and marketing tool. Like that's it, right? 80% is the marketing tool. And I was speaking with somebody about the ERP, about an ERP integration, and talking about just explaining the difference between deals and orders. And meanwhile, they're used to seeing orders in ERPs. Like it's not an unknown quantity, right? But they've never seen it in Orange, right?
Yeah.
But when I say, the easy difference you can make is that deals are a sales management object. So if there is no sales to manage and it was just a purchase from a website, then that's the order, right? And you don't have to track revenue through deals anymore if there's no deals to be managed. And that was like I watched it on his face, like just so when you're at least a consultant, but even an admin in this case, like you don't, in this moment where everything is changing, if you can just create a little more awareness and certainty about what people are seeing, you don't have to go create a 4-hour project to add value, right? Sometimes it's just that little clarification that is an unlock. And it relates to this conversation started, wait, when it's like, no, your process is your process. We're not going to change your
Yes.
process just because we have these objects to work with. Like, we've got to figure this out. We're not going to make 3 duplicate deals for the same opportunity because we just need 3 different quotes. Like, we just got to figure out how to use the system right.
Yeah, and I think that customization is just such a big word, right? Because it means so many different things in the CRM. And I think that the example that you give is great because that is one of the ways that the use case changes so much how the implementation goes. And I think I mentioned that I have a client that has 14 ticket pipelines, right? And I told you that all tickets look the same at every stage for all pipelines. But one of those pipelines in particular has 4 pipelines in it, 4 different processes that start and end, and they use the open and close stages. And the moment I saw it, I said, why do you have 4 processes in it? So he explained that, of course, it was like the whole process of their business, and they wanted the team to see everything as a whole in one process. So it changed it owner in the middle. So it was like, oh God, how are you going to track ownership of this? Okay. So he told me, he asked me, why do you resist to this? Now, I can understand why you did it like this. It's just that I wouldn't recommend it. This was set up by other partner in the past. So I said, okay, let's just not criticize what other partners do. Okay, I can understand why you want to keep it like that, but I think that we still need to do some changes, starting for the record customization, because the information and the stages and everything that you do from this step to this step is not the same thing. It has nothing to do for what you do from this step to this stage. So we need to reset this. If you want to keep it in one pipeline, okay, I oppose to that, but okay, I can accept this. Of course, there were missing custom objects that needed to be created, and that was why they weren't seeing the whole picture of that, right? But I was thinking about, okay, I can understand that not either other partner knew how to set this up, but something very basic as changing the views, changing the properties, changing the cards that you put. This is game changing for them. Right now, they have I'll make a list of 120. I don't know how many properties there are there. That is unmanageable. And when I ask him, okay, how is your team doing with this? No, everyone is super lost. This is super mixed up. Nobody knows where anything is. And I could understand that.
Surprise.
Yeah, of course. So we said, okay, we need to do something very basic. We need to go over each of these stages to define what are the specific properties. And okay, I can understand that a client doesn't know how the cards in a view work. They could be conditional, not, you can even have custom cards. But last week, a partner, someone that I work with, said, think that a custom card is only for integrations. And I said, no, it's not. So I think, again, there's so much going on in HubSpot that we need to embrace not knowing it all, but also keeping up to start knowing more. Because it's not like magic, and I think we discussed it on the Profoundly event. It's not like magic that we gain new knowledge. So keeping up to date with everything new, it takes time, it takes effort, of course. But I think that from admins and from partners' point of view, we need to know how the CRM works. We need to know what we can do or we cannot do for clients. So custom cards is not only for integrations, it's one type of a custom card, of course, to show either information coming from a third-party app or a custom coded card showing information outside, inside HubSpot. We can show reports, but we can show not only information inside HubSpot and outside HubSpot, we can make it show whatever we want to show. That is the thing. Custom cards are custom to show whatever we want. So there's no limitation, actually. Right now, the API has a lot of opportunities, so we can do almost everything. I can understand maybe some partners don't specialize in that. Maybe they don't have the experience, I know. But we cannot limit clients just to do what standard things do. Because the CRM has extended so much that I think we should start advising clients better.
Well, right. And it's like, it has to come down to asking questions and not making assumptions. I mean, this,
exactly.
I think one struggle that HubSpot has, but now I'm even thinking about it differently. Because whenever anything's tied to like traditional stuff and the traditional SaaS way, I'm like, okay, I'm going to assume I can find something wrong with it before I suggest we should start doing it in the HubSpot. Because I think so much of the value of HubSpot has been the guardrails, and that it's not just a system that's a blank slate. And even as you're talking about it, one of the challenges that we expect to see as people can name things whatever they want is that it's going to create friction when getting help for that thing that is no longer called a contact. And somebody says, oh yeah, our students records. So now you automatically have to add a question to your discovery, which is that a custom object or is it the contacts object? Right? As an example.
And just because people can rename things, that doesn't change how the thing works, just changes the name. So in the example that you gave before, just because I rename deals by orders, if it's not automated, if it's not doing the same thing, the purpose, the dynamic, just because I recall companies' payments, that doesn't mean that they are payments. That doesn't mean that that is connected to Stripe, for example. So again, we need to take this seriously, think a lot about it. So there are going to be basic and simple examples. I think contact to students is kind of easy to suppose what they are talking about, but I think it's true that we need to start asking more questions because of this, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to share my screen just because just to start to, I mean, this is going to be an education curve for like the rest of the year, I think. Just understanding the impact of this. And let me see if I can just make this a little bigger, put us down here.
You need to break everything online, Chris.
Right. So I did this already, right? I changed contacts. Like yesterday on the morning show, I was like, I gave everybody permission to change contacts to one of two things, humans or people, right? Like everything else, I think you risk siloing your CRM for no reason. And it's going to be interesting to see how HubSpot does this across the portal, right? Because it was super easy for me to come in to the object library and change the name, literally like friction free. So kudos to the team. The thing we always love about HubSpot is they don't just roll over when trying to match functionality of Salesforce, as an example, right? When they finally deliver it, conditional properties was another one. It is super easy to use and understand and, maintain, right? And now just the problem is overwhelm of like how much stuff we can actually do. But it's going to be interesting to see how they play, this game of first of all, I changed it to human, and this statement still applies, right? Any person who interacts with the HubSpot user's business, right? But then over here, we see that it still has the contacts, underneath, right? So how are they going to play that game of making sure that contact type or that object type is still known and understood it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and another thing that we need to consider is that just because we are changing the label name, that is what's going on here, we're changing the label name, the internal name of the object is still context. So I think that from the API and from workflows and for all the other functionalities, yet, because this doesn't mean that in the future this won't change, the internal name doesn't change. So again, I can understand admins changing names for users and functionality and adoption, but then from the admin point of view, it's still context, even though we change it to humans, right?
Right. Well, that's where also, they've been
Because there
moving.
is no humans API. It's the context API, right?
Well, that's another thing. That's the way it's always been. And with all the new
Yeah.
objects, they've been moving to this, node, and basing everything on IDs and
Yeah.
things like that. But that's where we still have these historical objects. And I think that's starting to make sense why they could create new objects and just do a bunch of new stuff, like all the Commerce Hub objects that didn't have to follow any of the rules. Like all of a sudden you could clone like super easy, and you can't do that with all the other objects that you wanted to. And so they are moving towards this like ID like typing,
Yeah, to make it
right?
easier.
So it's gonna be fun to watch, because I'm even seeing like assign company owner to human by default. That's what, like, the next couple of weeks it's gonna be like, okay, where can I find the
Yeah, the
word
name was
contact,
replaced. Yeah.
right? Because they do give you they say somewhere that let's see here, something like, please note there are certain parts of HubSpot, particularly in settings, where you may still see the HubSpot default name, right?
Yes.
So they're probably going to let us uncover some of those spots too. um,
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress, but we should, again, a super admin that is going to do these changes should keep track or document that humans used to be the context standard object in HubSpot. Because as for the moment, not everything is going to be changed. We need to remember where did that came from, right? So it's not that we're tomorrow changing everything, the names. We just need to remember, just in case, because as you said, this is going to evolve in the next weeks, of course. But for the moment that we know how HubSpot works and the limitations, and that some things change faster than other ones, I think it's good to remember that, right? To take notes or to inform everyone that is working in the CRM that this object has changed name to this, but it's still this previous object. And I do see I love the idea of changing the names, because I have a lot of use cases. I have real estate that instead of calling them contacts, they want to call them owners, or they want to call them tenants. Or I can see simple examples because of changing the name. But I still think that if the functionality is going to be something completely different, if the dynamic of that object is going to be completely different, I think sometimes it's worth that it's a custom object for the moment. But I always say that I dreamt of having a new setup in HubSpot that whenever we started a new account, we can select 4 objects, we can put the names that we want, we can choose whatever properties that we wanted to have. So I think we are arriving there, that having it super customizable. But the transition right now that we have for users that are already using the CRM, I think these are the things that we need to take it slow and to think it a bit before doing it.
Yeah.
Not just because you can change the name, it's just, okay, let's just go change everything. Okay.
Right. And that's where, like, again, we come back to process, understanding your process. Like in the example where I was able to take somebody to the index screen calmly and understand, like, no, we talked about the process. You were on board with the process. This is just a small change that we need to make. Like, that's one thing that gets easier, right? Is training and enabling them to understand how the system actually works. But then when new ideas come up, it's like I continue to be pleasantly surprised at how easy it is because we've done all the building blocks right in HubSpot. It's like, oh yeah, we can do that like real quick. And I can show you how to do it real quick. Like that's my favorite part. Like he doesn't have to be behind the scenes and like me like sending it through the mail slot. Like you don't see anything behind the door, but here's your magic card, right? Those cards and those views work best, especially in the hands of, either admins or accidental admins, people who are in charge of the system, whether they want to be or not.
Yeah.
Like we can't be there right at their side with their process to say, okay, now this piece of data, like you're not seeing it here. This is like, okay, you send us a change request. You want to change the card, add one property to it. Like, no, we can't be putting ourselves or the customers in that position, in my opinion, at least when you have like, team lead users or the users that really, like at the end of the day, for the system to work, they need to know like how to go day to day, like, and make sure it's working for them in their process and make sure they don't get to the point where it's like, I gotta ask Chris to do this. So I'm not even gonna suggest it. I'll just accept it like the way that it is, right? So many users get to that point, and it's when I was on the inside, it was so painful like to see that mentality because that they have ideas and improvement answers. And they're just like, they've grown tired of suggesting things into these like unworkable systems. So one of my favorite parts is unlocking that. And again, we have HubSpot, which makes it easy to do that if you're willing. To your point earlier, where, one of the values I like to describe for why, I keep up with HubSpot and that value that I can provide in an engagement is that, there's 10 ways to do just about everything in HubSpot. And my whole job is to get you to the one that works for you without having you try all 10, because I've already tried all 10. But as I say that, and as you were talking about earlier, we have to be careful that we don't like fall in love with that one way now, because that's the part where, Bill Barlas was telling me yesterday, another partner came in and asked for help, and they just built this elaborate, complex solution and was trying to get help with it. And Bill was just like, oh, well, did you know that this thing, like you can just make this kind of stage and then you're good? And then the other person was like, oh, yeah, I'm overthinking it, aren't I? And it's like, yeah, let's not create 10 hours worth of work of like an integration project when we could just handle our, deal stages a little bit differently. How do you like look at kind of creating like a flexible, standardized approach to like, helping people think about HubSpot?
Oh, well, that's a big question. So I think we all have our preferences and the things that we know and we have proven evidence that work best. But I think that we still need to be flexible, as you were saying, to adapt that to the client's need. So I know a lot of people that love replicating the same models or the same structure for data for clients, and they propose always the same. So let's do this property, let's do this property. I suggest these values in this property. But then I go and see the client's portal and they are not using it. So you need to take a step back to see, okay, I can implement the same structure, the same formula for clients, but as long as that works, the moment that the client doesn't adopt it, it doesn't work for them. So I love to say to everyone that there are no magic formulas in our job, even though I can be productive, even though from the operational point of view, I can replicate stuff from one client to the other one, but always with that flexibility of adapting it to the client, right? And yesterday I have, for example, I presented for a new client, I presented a plan, and he told me, Okay, but can I do it by myself? Yeah, you can do it by yourself. Um, but it's gonna take you probably twice or three times the time that it will take me. And how would you know how to implement this? Because I know that I can do it one way or the other one, but you don't know. And I can also compare to other 30 portals that I have, and I can say, okay, I can see that I did like this there, so I can maybe do that. So I have other options. So my brainstorming is constantly, because I'm always working with other clients. When you work when you are the customer, you only know your point of view. You only know your situation. You cannot compare unless you go and speak to other professionals doing the same thing like you. You cannot compare. So it's rather difficult when people want to auto implement by themselves instead of doing it with a partner that has more experience, that have more scenarios being proved and tested. And so I think that there are no magic formulas again here. I think that sometimes if you want to do it faster, you should go with someone that knows. It's like when you go to the doctor, right? Yeah, if you want the pain gone and if you want the problem solved, or if you want the mechanic, okay, you can be 10 hours under your car trying to figure out what's wrong with the car, with everything, every light is popping red. Or you can go to the mechanic, they will plug it into the computer, they will do the scan, and they will say, okay, we need to change this. And I will do it in 10 minutes. Okay, it's $10,000, but I did it in 10 minutes. I solved your problem. How long would it take you? So I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know if if there's a right answer to your question.
Well, I
What
think
I
that's
really,
where, sorry, like you have to embrace, like nobody can keep up with the speed of not just HubSpot right now, like AI, like change, right? So you have to find a way to give yourself permission
yeah,
to not keep up yourself, but keep up, right? And that's where utilizing resources and saying, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to go to, get that information to learn how to do the thing. And while I highly recommend like um, the like vertical user groups, like people like you doing the same things, but like more and more I'm seeing, when they're using whenever, let's say you go to the CRM user group for your industry, and this person's using HubSpot, and this person's using Salesforce, and this person's using, whatever system, heaven forbid, like an ERP CRM, probably, uh, you know, you're going to get like some bad information that's not going to apply to your system. And I think so much of the value and of our conversations when we have all this experience is navigating in the moment, like what the words mean, if it's clear on what they mean, and if it's not clear, how to ask the questions to get clear, right? Because last week,
yeah,
it blew my mind. It continues to blow my mind how bad SaaS is and just the problems it has created with this just complex structure where you need four different partners to one to help you understand HubSpot, one to know the ERP and be in charge of implementation, one to implement the iPass solution, right? And I'm on this call, and literally at during the call, like somebody's saying the words external ID, right, for the object. And this person means one thing and this other person means another thing.
yeah.
Nobody knew that until you move through the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I had to apologize at the end. I was like, sorry, like, unfortunately, because of the dynamics of the people that you have to work with, different systems, we
Yes,
have to go through that conversation. Like, there's no other way to figure out that we were talking about completely different things.
yes,
And if we don't have that conversation, the integration gets screwed up, like literally.
yeah,
And that's the kind of stuff that costs thousands of dollars to fix when you implement it. You give the go signal and then it breaks, right? And it was just
yeah. And
like,
that,
wow, this is a symptom of how customers have to like work with all these different systems to get their jobs done right now. It's wild.
yeah, let's just not forget that customers still whenever we work with a sales manager, we work with a marketing manager, we work with ideally a CRM admin, ideally, but in general, you work with someone that is still trying to do their own job. So it's not their role to learn about HubSpot. They just need to know how to use it to do their work. So, and I was laughing when you were mentioning that, because yes, yesterday I was having the same conversation, because this marketing manager was telling me, no, because in HubSpot we have campaigns and we have leads. And yeah, you have the same thing in HubSpot, but it's not the same thing. Yeah, so I don't understand. So now I cannot cross the information. Okay, so who did the Salesforce integration? Now it was already set up when okay, so we need to retake a look at how the Salesforce integration is done. And then, of course, I can tell you the differences about leads in Salesforce, leads in HubSpot, campaigns. It's not exactly the same. They might sound the same because we're talking, okay, campaigns. Yeah, but it's not how both of them are used the same way.
Right.
So yeah, I think that tech is a wonderful world. It has a lot of complexity, and it's understandable that people don't know everything. And we specialize in HubSpot, that we're very used to having clients using Salesforce and other platforms. So integration is part of the conversation. We do this all day, every day. So that's why we know more than probably any normal user, because you're doing your work that is not HubSpot specialty. It's related with HubSpot because you do it in HubSpot, but it's not about HubSpot. So,
Yeah.
um,
I like to help admins understand that. Like none of HubSpot is nobody else's job. Like they have a different job.
yeah,
And the only person that has HubSpot as a job is the super admin. And that's really if you're labeled, like if that's your label. Like if you're an accidental admin, you still have like likely a different job,
yeah.
and it makes it challenging. But something comes to mind that I would love to work on you with. And this is our homework for next time. This renaming stuff. I think what we need to create, or what users need, is a do this, like don't do that, like easy
Mm-hmm.
guide.
Yeah.
The only example I have uh, kind of begrudgingly liked, just because it helps the sales gap that there's been, and that's the ability to change the name of deals to opportunities to match Salesforce when that causes confusion. But on the other side of that, how many people are going to want to change contacts to leads, because that's how they match HubSpot, like with their Salesforce.
Mm.
And I've already tested. I couldn't change the name of services to deliverables when I already had a deliverables custom object in the portal.
Yes.
But otherwise, like getting super clear on process and role of HubSpot, and if there's other systems, what their role is. Because what I'd love to help people avoid, even the new users, right? Contacts has worked, in my opinion, because like HubSpot is the only system I've seen that's really built. The entire platform is built around the contact object instead of the company or the deal object, right? And when you do something like change contacts to students, right? Are you really you really never have parents in the CRM? You don't have,
Teachers.
teachers, professors, all these
Yeah.
other humans that you'd like to manage communications with. Now, as much cold water as I'm pouring on this thing here, I do realize in my mind, thankfully, it seems easy to change back, right? As soon as you realize that.
Yeah.
But like, how much process will you have documented the change? Like, because I know people are really excited about this, and they're just going to go change all their documentation, and then like, just be careful about that, because don't pigeonhole yourself, because what this is not yet, and I'd love your take here, and then we can wrap. Like, this is not custom objects, right?
Yeah.
Because
And let's
like,
not forget that, sorry, but the current standard objects in HubSpot have a generic names for a reason, because when we were limited in Starter or in Pro to have X amount of objects, we didn't have custom objects. Having contacts in general will allow you to have then different types of contacts inside. The same thing with companies. Let's imagine that we rename companies to customers. And what do we do with vendors? What do we do with providers? What do we do with partners? What do we do all the other types of companies that we have? So if you change the name to something super specific as students, then you will need custom objects to recreate all the other type of contacts that you have. So the same thing with opportunities. What about renewals? What about upsells or cross-sells? Yes, they are opportunities generic, but to change it to a generic name, let's just leave deals. Unless you only have one type of deal, I only sell. I don't do upsells. I don't do cross-sells. I don't do renewals. I only do orders. I only have an e-commerce. Okay, if that's your case, okay. But if you have more than one, for example, I have a client that has loans. I can change the name to loans, but what about all the other processes when they need to do a done-in, when they need to do a renegotiation? They're still using deals, so I cannot use loans as the generic name. Yeah. And the same thing with tickets. When you have imagine that we change tickets and you have an onboarding process, you have a ticketing system process, you have any other internal process that you want to do in tickets. The moment that you change the name, you are super restricting it to just one thing. So we need to consider that changing the name is not going to be for everyone unless you use a generic name that most suits your purpose, right?
Yeah, because in all these other systems where it's been possible to name it what you want, it's also possible to just spin up another object, like with another name, right? So we could we change it to students. All right, I do need parents. I do need teachers. Exactly. It's like, well, you've got 4 other objects that you could do that with. And you could change appointments, listings, services, but that's it. Like, there's no extra. So I'm curious, and maybe we can address this next time when we dive deep into do this and not that. Like, what's going to happen with custom objects? And is this when it finally comes down from enterprise or not? I'm super interested to see what happens. Because the only added thing you need now is more. Like, if we can already customize the rest of the objects, is it some kind of extra set that we're buying, or so super interested to see where they go there.
Yeah, so I think I have a simple answer to that, but we can talk about more later. But I think that in the past, if you only wanted to create a new object with a different name, you weren't going to pay full enterprise just to do that. So right now, what we can do, it's better because it was just renaming things, right? So I still see that going enterprise and having more than the limited amount of objects that we have now in Pro, for example, even though we can rename them, might not be enough. But that's okay, because the enterprise suite should be for more robust data models, more advanced features that you need, not only to have one more custom object. So I do think that right now this is more ecological for a lot of customers that have restricted themselves for having one custom object because they weren't going to pay enterprise, right? But let's just not forget that this is a beta right now, changing the name. So it's not live. Of course, most of the betas, then they're a keeper, but might not. So this is a test for HubSpot. So right now they want to see what happens. They want to see what we do with it, what we change, what are the limitations. We need to give feedback about that. So I think this is going to be a test. This could work, but this might not work too. And this is a lot of work, of course, internally, as we were mentioning, for HubSpot and for us as admins to work with. So yeah, we'll discuss more about this.
Yeah, and I think there's this is another thing where I'm hopeful that all these things that have been available in other systems that are finally becoming available, where it gets closer to just a blank slate, do whatever you want. Because we know in most cases, that creates just messes, right? And people don't, every time you see an example, well, I can do this other system lets you do it. And it's like, well, nobody likes using that system either. So
Yeah.
like, why are we holding that off here? Right. But now we
Yeah.
have AI, and that's where I'm like, I can imagine they're like, okay, we can open the door, because at the end of the day, AI is going to maintain this now. And it doesn't really care if it's named deals or opportunities or whatever, because it can understand context at scale and all this stuff. So I imagine there's some of that, but super interested to see. April was big last year when they launched Content Hub, and it kind of never slowed down until like you got to inbound. So we've got some great hugs coming up this month, introducing cash flow next
Yes.
week, frame.ai at the end of the month. And those two, I mean, get used to hearing those names for the next few months.
Yeah.
And don't fear it. Like, they're going to be very powerful not adversaries. That's not the right word. Um, they're going to help. They're going to help in
Yes.
so many ways. So take a minute, just take a minute to step back,
Alice.
learn,
Not
right?
adversaries.
Allies. Yes.
Alice.
Thank you. Powerful allies in this fight against data management and data
Yeah.
cleanliness and user adoption.
Yeah.
So just because you don't quote or you don't bill out of HubSpot, take a minute, understand what cash flow is bringing, because it's changing the use case of the HubSpot data model. And when that happens, that means a lot of other functionality in HubSpot is going to be, impacted and updated. So take a minute. That's next Tuesday. And then in between those two hugs, we'll be back with our, do this, not that, for object renaming. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
So until next time, everybody have a great week. And thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.